Welcome to Sipping Reality with Jill and
Megan.
Hope everyone's doing great this week. We have been not here for a few weeks, have we?
No, we have not.
Well, life has been interesting and it's got us thinking. So we're thinking about the direction of this podcast and where it should go, right?
Yeah, it's been on our minds.
And it hasn't really changed much. I think that we're just gaining some depth and understanding of that depth, that this is going to literally be a journal of the journey of our minds.
Yeah.
And what's in our minds?
It's broad.
It's really broad. What's in our minds?
Oh my gosh.
We have some interesting minds.
Yeah, we do.
We would love to continue to talk about sex,
Dating,
parenting, dating,
mental health,
like parts work, like deep trauma work, like not like fluffy, like, oh, are you anxious or depressed, like, but like the meaty, juicy, like healing, like wild journey of digging into your own soul, kind of mental health work.
history.
History? Is it real? Is it fake? What's made up? What's been
not?
changed? What's been hidden? What actually happens? Such an interesting topic.
Yeah.
The world today and how utterly messed up it is. And the beauties. I think we should throw that in there too.
Yeah.
Because there's some really beautiful things about being alive. And I've had periods of time that were really dark and I couldn't see those beautiful aspects to it all. But with the ebb and the flow and embracing it, embracing all the madness, somehow today I kind of see some of the beauty, which I'll take.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Yeah, me too. There's a lot of beauty.
There is.
I mean, even just looking out the window right now, there's beautiful autumn leaves that are turning colors and the sun is coming through them, which makes them more bold, and
the sun is twinkling on the window as it bounces off the leaves that are moving in the wind.
it's gorgeous.
Something so simple that we can miss if we don't look at it.
If we're too inward.
Yes.
Which is easy to do.
There is such thing as being too inward. There's also such thing as being too outward, where you don't look at yourself at all. And unfortunately, I think that that's like a disease that is growing.
Yeah, like rampantly.
Yep, and also too inward. I mean, I see both, I guess, where people just can't see past themselves to see the world or see others. And then there's people that all they see is the external of what they want and what they can gain, and so they miss so much.
Yeah.
Focus on that. So let's focus on how to get somewhere in between and what it's all about.
Yeah, so what's our most pressing thing right now on our mind?
I don't know if that's PG, but since we're not a PG,
We're not.
so we just watched this man from Sweden. He just gave us a show together. We just watched him jerk himself off until he came.
Yeah, that was really hot.
Yeah,
Which was interesting to do next to my best friend that I used to be like a nun with.
They don't know that
They
about
don't.
us. We haven't talked about
We
that.
haven't, but that's
a good direction to go, though.
that's history right there.
That's history. I think that brought us to the direction. So let's talk about how we met.
Yeah, that's a really great idea.
Me and Megan met at a Bible study in a Christian church, actually.
Yeah, and it was actually the only time I was able to go. I was working at the post office and working literally like 7 days a week. And ever since I started, I wasn't able to make Bible study. And there was this one night I was able to get out, and I just went, and I was really struggling. I was wanting to leave my husband and struggling with a woman that I was like really fawning over, And I was just like, I'm gonna go. And I happened to mention alcohol use, and she was sober for like, I don't know, 9 years at the time.
I think 8 probably.
And just stopped me after.
Because it's been like 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just stopped me after Bible study, and you're like, hey, like, I have been sober and I can help you. Take my number. And then
we didn't talk.
No.
And
then I never went back to Bible study.
No, I never saw her. Well, I didn't see her again for 2 months. So then I started doing a Bible study out of my house because the Bible study at church was just not fulfilling enough for me. It was a little bit too
surfacey.
That's what I was gonna say, surfacey. I was like holding myself back from saying that.
You know, it's interesting, like, even back then, like, not knowing what we know now, we still had that desire to just be so deep that we weren't seeing in other people.
Deep and raw.
Yeah. I like, well, that's just filthy.
That's just us. That's what we're all about.
That's the best anyways, deep and raw. So,
that's how we've always been, you know. We don't want to talk about the fluff, you know. We don't want to sit on the surface, arguing and chit-chatting, and or all coming into agreement even with like something that's not important. Like, if we're gonna talk and we're gonna spend time, let's talk about something that's important. Let's do it right.
Yeah. Well, at the time, the reason I think you were so fired up to get my number after Bible study is a topic came up. I think we were in Corinthians, and we were talking about doing something in front of someone that could entice them.
Oh, make them stumble.
Yes, cause them to stumble, right? And I mentioned that the pastor had I had just told him that I was having trouble drinking, and then she wasn't laughing, she was coughing. She has pneumonia. I had just told him I had some issues, and then had been invited after church to his house, and there was like beer everywhere. And, you know, I grabbed one and drank one. He didn't check in with me. He didn't ask, you know, it was just, it caused me to stumble back then. And I mentioned that at Bible study, and one of the ladies was like, we're not going to talk about that.
She's like, we don't talk about the pastor at all. And I was like, there's something really wrong with that. Like, if the pastor did something wrong, shouldn't that be what we're talking about? Like, shouldn't that be a concern of us as members of his church to be discussing that? But it was like, shh, no.
Yeah.
Don't talk.
And not only did she tell me not to say anything, but her tone was like, shut me down. Like, and I was like, oh.
And she was like a little upset, like how she had that look
how dare you?
How dare you for mentioning anything about the pastor?
Like, we don't talk about him like that.
Yeah, as if like you're just gossiping.
Oh, she did. I think she did mention that I was.
I don't know.
And I was like, oh no, but
like,
I'm like, he stated this in front of the whole congregation that he had an issue.
Yes, because he did. He had just shared like 2 weeks before,
right,
on Sunday, that he was having an issue with alcohol.
So I wasn't saying anything.
And he sat up there and teared up and cried, and
I wasn't saying anything that he hadn't said publicly. Like, yeah. So it was just, I don't know. I think her and I kind of bonded. Like, she was like, oh, like noticing that from across the room, and you know, that's when she afterwards was like, yeah, we're gonna like not be like that. Like, what was that? And she was the only one in the Bible study that noticed that like whole interaction and was not comfortable with it. So I think we kind of bonded from that. And and then we didn't talk afterwards. You sent out a blast text message to everybody.
I sent out a text message to every woman from the church that I had there, a text message or their text message that I had their phone number, not text message.
And you had just gotten my text, my phone number, so I was
in June, yes. Yeah. In June. I'd gotten your number at that Bible study, right? So, and then we didn't text, but I was like, but I remembered Megan, and I had her number, so I sent her out the little thing that I had written up about the Bible study at my house, and the very first one, Megan was the only one that showed up to the very first one. We did have some other women show up to other ones, but the first one, it was just me and you, right?
Yeah, and I was just in such a place that, like,
you almost didn't go.
When I got your text message, I was like, I have to go. Like, it was this very strange urge that I was like, I was in a really messed up place. I'm like, I really need to go. And and I ended up being the only one going most of the time, and I never missed one.
Yep. And which is strange for you, because you have never been consistent
at anything.
You are not a consistent person, and you shared that about yourself, and I'm like, but you were so consistent about that Bible study.
Yeah.
After that, there was something, like, we were like instant friends. It was just gonna happen.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah. And then
so much has happened.
Oh my gosh.
We've lived so many lifetimes.
There's so
then.
much, and
that was only like 8 years ago.
I could take up like probably 5 episodes just explaining, like, where from that moment, like, meeting to now,
how many changes,
more episodes than that. Oh my gosh, like, what developed after that, and like how we got to where we are now, like the 5 years of being like really strictly like religious.
Yeah, we left the Christian church because we started reading the Bible together, and we were reading the Bible separately too, and we both had been and had read parts or whatever of it. And I had just started in January reading the Bible front to back, and I think I was still in that process, but close to the end of it, or maybe had read it once through at that point. I don't know. I kept reading it through and through after that, but going. What was it? I don't know. I lost where I was going, but I'm going wherever I'm going now. So we're just gonna keep flowing. So started going to sermons on Sunday morning, and the pastor would pull up one verse, or maybe a few verses together, and then he would create a purpose for his sermon. Like, I want everybody to be excited about this topic, or I want everybody to cry over this topic. And then he would make up this whole sermon that had nothing to do with the Bible, all around this one verse, pulling it completely out of context and not even discussing it in a way that made sense to what it said with the rest of the chapter. And then at the end, every single sermon I went to, he ended with unity. Unity, unity, unity.
Well, I remember us looking at each other after that. We would sit next to each other, and he would say something, and we'd be like, that's not in the Bible.
Right, yeah, he said, I mean, most of what he said wasn't in the Bible, which is my point. He would take a verse out of the Bible and then say a whole slew of stuff for 45 minutes, and then he'd tie it back to this verse, but it wasn't even what the verse was about.
Well, then we started listening to other pastors and
and it was the same.
Yeah, we're like, wait, they're saying stuff that's either not in the Bible, or they're taking something out of context that's in the Bible that is in the context of the chapter. Like you said, it's not even what it's saying.
Yes, it was very scary. It wasn't scary. I mean, we weren't scared.
We were a little mind blown.
But it was, yes, I mean, it was scary, the fact that we recognize that these people are standing up there teaching from the Bible. I'm doing quotes with my fingers, but they're not actually teaching what the Bible says at all, and everybody's living their life based on these sermons, and it's all just this, and I know you've probably heard this before, but this feel-good message. It was all to invoke emotion, to make you feel good and feel like you're receiving something, but it had nothing to do with truth. Mm-hmm. And, we're deep and raw. We're about truth here. So it did not vibe with us. We were not cool with that.
That was probably like the biggest paradox shift in my life at that point.
Yeah, it was pretty huge because, I grew up Christian. I grew up going to a Christian church, not regularly. We weren't a church family, but like, I mean, that was like an aspect that was always there. I always knew about the Bible. I always, but most everything I'd ever been taught about the Bible and about this Messiah actually isn't what the Bible says.
Yeah, which really freaked me out.
Yeah,
that the whole world is based on these beliefs that when you read through the Bible, they're not even there. They're like
they're not even true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, who made this up? And why do we all believe this? And then I think that made this crack in our minds that allowed us to start researching all of these other topics and really controversial ones. Like flat earth is so controversial. Let's not go there. But, we started to look at that. We started to become willing to look at that stuff.
Flat earthers should die.
But, right?
Yeah.
But whereas weeks before, somebody had mentioned something like that to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's crazy. And now my mind's cracked enough where I'm willing to take an honest look at everything. And there's a lot of rabbit holes that I am like, that's baloney. Researched it? No. Not even worth researching. I mean, there's some people that believe some really kooky stuff, and it really turns people off from rabbit holes. But there's some really amazing ones.
Yeah.
That create such a mind shift
that
you will never be the same.
Like reading in Genesis 6 that the angels mated with women and brought forth giants.
Yeah.
It legitimately says that.
And there's evidence on the earth that that's true. Like, then you start to dig into history, and history actually confirms so much of what it says. It's incredible. So that led us to get really into the truth of the Bible, which made us dig in, but it became our whole world to the extent where we still, I don't think it had the maturity, maybe the right word, to...
Well, I think we're operating under such a mode of like trauma and abuse.
Yes.
There was
But in those parts, those childlike parts, there were so much more of them that it isn't immaturity that takes over.
Totally.
In a lot of ways, right?
Yeah. No, we were super immature.
Yeah. Ignorant, immature, like that, what was the point that I was going to say now? I totally lost it. Happens all the time. That our pride and our ego and all these other parts that were still there, that were so significant, that because there was still so much unhealed stuff at the time, and this was such a mind fuck to our brains to start discovering all this truth, that we gosh darn it, I lost the point again.
Well, I think I'll say that we started trying to find, I think we've spent so much of our lives like misled and confused, and we wanted some solid foundation, and I think we really craved to like build that for ourselves, and I think that's really where our whole direction started to head in.
It did, but there was this pride that I know for me took over, that was like, I wanted to be right. I wanted to be right, and that took over too.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the time, like, oh, look what we know. Look, I'm right. Like, hey, this is
the truth. Yeah.
Like, you need to believe this. Like, why aren't you seeing what I'm seeing? Like, there was a lot of aspects of myself that I'm really grateful have been shed away over the years.
Yeah.
That were still there. So we went in this direction where we moved away from love and light and being a blessing in the world, and seeing the blessings in the world, and seeing the reality and the truth, and trying to integrate that and live within it. And instead we went into this deeply religious, like, Torah, like, we're gonna cover our heads and we're gonna be the best wives and best moms and both have 5 babies, and we're going to isolate at home. We're gonna embrace that we're being isolated. We're being isolated
by our abusers.
Yes, in order to not leave our abusers and heal and grow. Instead, we're going to embrace it by taking this hyper patriarchal view that's been written into scripture, and I say written in intentionally, because I believe it has been, and take that on, and then the pride and ego feel good about that and tell everybody else they need to be that way because it's so good, and it's really protecting this bubble of sickness that we're still living in.
Yeah, because in order to not feel like we were being abused and we were in some kind of control over it, we were like, no, I'm choosing this, and I'm choosing to be isolated because I am set apart from the world.
Yes.
And it's like we were lying to ourselves.
Choosing to have control over our abuse, to feel that we were in control even though we were not. Yeah. Like we were just talking about earlier with all these issues and a lot of kinks, and a lot of that stuff is avoidant attachment style. It's like, I love you so I have to leave you. Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm scared of losing you, so I'm going to dump you and leave you or ghost you. Like, it's so sad, but like, that's a similar thing that we were doing. We were trying to gain control over our lives by embracing these doctrines that made us feel like we had control over our lives, but we didn't have to change anything. Right. We got to stay in it and not change anything.
Yeah, lie to myself that this is my choice.
And in essence, brought us so deeper in that now that we're coming out, it's so much harder to come out than it would have been if we had just come out of it.
Well, because we had freaking 3 more children.
Yes. Well, I had 2 more. You had 3 more. Holy moly.
Yeah, I only had 2, and they were 9 and 6. Yeah. I mean, I was like scot-free.
My 7-year-old was 6 months old when I met Megan.
And I don't regret my children, but I know that
it's hard. It's hard to be a single mom of 5 kids, man.
Yeah.
And so, I have to say today, just to wrap this all into a pretty little bow, if we must, which we don't, but I will, is that I still have this faith, but it's got this like freedom and beauty and lightness and this foundation of truth that doesn't need to be muddied with all the details of rules. And that doesn't mean there's not good ways to follow. There are good ways to live this life. There are, but it's not these rules that everybody needs to abide by, and they're things that I choose to live by because that's my choice to make, and gosh darn it feels so freaking good, man.
It does.
It's this, and I can live that way and see the truth and see and face truth and face where I'm wrong, because I also don't have that pride anymore where I know that I'm still wrong about some of these truths. Like, I don't have it all right. I don't understand all of history. I understand that there's things that are lies and written in and all of that, but I can't pinpoint every single one, and I don't need to. It's cool to learn. I'm open to learn. I'm open to hear, but I don't have to know it all. What I have to know is that I'm walking in a way that doesn't harm others and honestly brings me a joy and freedom that I've never experienced in my entire life, and not in every moment, but gosh darn it, in a good chunk of them, right?
Yeah. I mean, so to go back to our original, what we first started talking about, like coming from all of that and then seeing the like juxtaposition of sitting next to you and watching a man jerk off was really interesting, because I don't know, it sounds stupid, but it like kind of resembles this like freedom. Yeah. like wow, we were in this like really like tight box that allowed no room for like joy. Like, yeah. Not to say that watching someone jerk off brings joy. I mean, but it I don't know. He had so much joy on his face, and like it is a sexy thing. I don't know.
It brought some joy all around.
It does, and I think that there's such a stigma around sex in general for both genders. But like, it is beautiful. It is a beautiful thing.
And there is going too far, and there is all of that, and there's being unsafe, and there's all of those things. And to not recognize that either is an immaturity and an ignorance and all of that. But again, there's always this narrow path. There's always this middle ground. There's always...
It's not so strict, like no sex or a ton of sex, or like we're not allowed to do that at all, or like, you know, going to the other extreme. Like there's a narrow path. Like, and what we were on, it was like, we're not allowed to even have pleasure. Like I
wasn't having sex.
I
was in a sexless, intimaceless. That's not a word. Intimaceless. Intimate. There was no intimacy. There was no emotional or physical intimacy or intellectual intimacy.
Yeah.
None.
Yes.
Zero
Yeah.
of any of those things. I was so dry and starved for intellectual discussion, for emotional intimacy, for physical intimacy, any touch at all, any talk or care of one another at all. Just so starved, I completely shut down.
Well, and it makes sense.
I didn't think I would ever want to touch another man again.
Well, it makes sense that, you know, you would pick through the Torah and say, well, I'm not allowed to do these things.
Well, find the things that support that for me so that I could stay in that space.
Right.
Yeah, again, to stay stuck. Like, it's okay that I have this type of marriage because...
Well, it's okay that our bodies were made to feel pleasure, but that's because we're supposed to deny it. That's literally what we're thinking.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'd be
I mean,
like,
because we had never even made love before.
Sex is only to have babies.
Neither one of us had ever experienced.
Megan would always say, well, why does it feel so good? That I'd be like, so we do it, so we procreate. And yes, there's some logic to that, but does that make it sinful to make? Yeah, because we hadn't ever made love, and now we have both experienced making love, and gosh,
that was the most
it,
soul intertwining, deep like experience I've ever had.
And it wasn't to make a baby, and it was the most intimate I've ever been with another human being. So incredible, and I am so grateful that I've now experienced that.
Me too.
Gosh darn it, it's incredible.
It is. I mean, now I crave it all the time, but
and
that
I'm
closeness,
sad.
I mean, there's nothing, I've never experienced anything in my life that comes close to that kind of closeness.
Nope. I listen to that song all the time from Goo Goo Dolls now. What's the name of it? Do we know the name of the song? I don't want the world to see me. Yes. And it's like, I something, I want to touch you, and I just want to be in this moment. Oh my gosh,
closest to heaven that I've ever touched.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so I heard that
and
song,
I don't
and I mean,
want to leave you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I I heard that song all the time growing up, but not growing up.
Well, now
once it came out, I'm a little older, but yeah. So anyways, I knew the song, but I hadn't heard it in so long, and it popped up on a reel. It was in the background, and I was like, oh my gosh. And all I could think about hearing that song was making love. And now I just listen to it, and every time it just brings back that moment for me of like, oh, like, yeah, we talk. And it's interesting too, because whether you believe in the Bible or not, and you don't have to, and I'm not saying that anyone should or shouldn't, but it's just so interesting because it talks about two flesh become one, and it's like, I've experienced that. And
it's so real and so deep, and
the most incredible moment of my life.
Why would that even be created? Why would that? I mean, and we've talked about this. We do believe that we are to have our person and created to be able to have that kind of a deep connection. But this world is so broken. People are so broken. There's narcissists. There's avoidance. People are traumatized. Like they hurt.
Anxiously attached. I mean, gosh darn it. I've always been anxiously attached, and so I'll pick on people like me. Like, we're annoying, man. We're like,
what are you
doing?
Where are you going?
Validate me. Validate me.
Do you love me?
Gosh darn it. Like, I always pick on like narcissists and avoidance, but let's pick on like the anxiously attached for a moment, because man,
And
I
then people
can't
you
stand
do want to run
officially
away. Yeah.
attached people.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's all that. There's so much.
All based on trauma and hurt. And the more that people become anxious or avoidant and all of these things, the more that's created, because we stimulate more of that in each other.
Yep.
Because we're constantly warring against each other. Just the fight over the sexes. Like, oh, that's a whole nother podcast. We're not going there, because me and Megan are going to pick a place to go out to eat and have fun.
Yeah, I need to eat.
Yeah, we're going to have some food and maybe go someplace fun. It would be awesome if we got to hang out for a little bit and meet some other people and be super social. And if not, we're going to have some good food. I'm going to get a good night's sleep and drive to Woburn for a soccer game tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'll probably lay in bed all day and read a book. That sounds really great.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I was a little wild last night. I have a headache still, actually.
Oh.
And that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, so we'll get off on some other topics next time. But this is going to be just that, a journal into our minds. That's how our relationship started. That's what it's all about. It's gone up and down and all around, and we're still friends, and we've been close from the start.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've definitely grown closer, but like, I don't think we could be closer.
Oh my God. I really want to mention this before we go, but like literally how we got into the sexual part of our relationship, right? I mean, we are not sexual together, but I mean, like being...
We're platonic friends.
Yes. I actually started the journey away from the religious stuff before she did, and I kind of stopped talking to her for a little while because I was afraid she was gonna be like, you're a sinner. But I had met someone, and I had made love for the first time in my life, and I wasn't able to share that with my best friend at the time, and it sucked.
It does suck. It still sucks.
It does.
We didn't have that.
It does, and it was the most amazing experience I've ever had. I still think about him. I miss him deeply, because that experience was just something that I've never had before and never had after. I had text somebody details of my encounter with him.
Sexcapades.
And I text Jill instead. And
I got a text, so I open up my phone and I see a text from Megan. I'm like, oh, Megan, because we had been texting every few days, like not every day like usual, not maybe texting once a day, like just to stay in touch, but we usually talk all day, like every day, as we can. And I opened up this text, and it was very explicit text about her sexual encounter with God knows who in my mind. And I was like, so I wrote back, excuse me, who are you having sex with?
Oh my God. And I sat there on my mom's couch, and my mom saw my face, and she was like, what happened? I was like, I text Jill instead of my friend.
We had both been separated from our husbands about 6 months at the time, and I had not even thought about talking to another man because I was still shut down completely sexually at that point. So it was quite shocking to me.
And I think I said something like...
I wasn't totally shocked because it was you, and I did know you.
Yeah.
I knew enough about you that I wasn't completely shocked.
I'm like, this is going to ruin our relationship. She's never going to talk to me again.
And instead, it had the opposite effect.
Now she's heard nastier things out of my mouth.
Well, about 3 months later, I had started to, like, for some reason have this infatuation of sorts with this guy online. And I don't know what it was, but something intrigued me about him. And I talked to him on the phone a couple times, and, like, all of a sudden, like, out of nowhere, like, my sexual desire came back. And I was like, whoa. And, like, I'm 44 now, so it came back with a vengeance because it was gone for a long time. And it was, like, floodgates open, like...
And I heard I already opened that door, getting my explicit experience.
Yeah, and then we started you started sharing stuff with me and everything. So, yeah, it helped to open the door, actually. And,
I remember
that
one.
Like, I think I'm going to start dating. And then I started dating, and I met this man, and it was amazing. And just like Megan's, we made love. And I mean, the second time we were ever together sexually, we made love. And I wanted to wait with him. When I started dating him, I was like, it was all so weird. I was out of like this 14-year marriage relationship, and oh my gosh, and like this nun for so long, right? And I was just, it was all so weird. And I was like, oh, well, I can't have sex unless, you know, we're like, I'm like committed with someone, all of this stuff. And you know, we decided we weren't going to be with anyone else. So I was like, okay. I'm like, I can't wait. I can't, because I couldn't wait. Like, it had just been too long, and everything was back, and I just needed this man. And it was so unbelievably
I remember
incredible.
you just being like, I can't not do this.
Yeah, I can't not do this.
No, and there's such an internal struggle, and I went through that struggle without you. Like, should I do this? Should I not do this? It's like, this is sin. Is this sin? Like,
it's really painful that we didn't go through that together.
Yeah, I mean,
I missed all that. But
you know, but I'm really grateful for the friendship that we have now, and we have really become really close. And
well, what happened was, so we didn't finish this little story here.
Sorry.
So
I get off topic.
So about a couple months after I started talking to this man, we stopped talking. And I was like, and he was into kink, and he had talked about, you know, like bondage and some different kinks that he's into, and I was really into it, and I wanted to try it. I mean, I was like totally like, yeah, I was like, let's do this, let's try these things. But things were so good between us. He was like, I just never even want to add that in because it's just so good. And I was in total agreement. Like, we just never had the time to throw any of that in because we were literally making love. And it was so amazing. Oh, yes. So amazing. And so when we ended things, we had never tried anything kinky. And so I was left having like made love, wanting that connection like forever, for it never to end because it's so incredible. Wanting to experience kink. So I went to Megan and I came to her and talked to her about the kink website, and I was just like,
and I told you all, right?
I was like, Megan, I think it's time for me to make a profile. And she was like, yes! So I did, and then, yeah, it's been over since there. We've shared everything.
Well, then I told you some things about myself, and you literally stared at me.
Oh, yeah, that's when you told me your name.
Yeah, you stared at me from across the table, and then you reached your hand out and said, hi, my name is Jill. Nice to meet you.
That was an awesome moment. That was really a beautiful moment in our friendship.
It was. Yeah.
And we've lasted through all of that.
Yeah. Shifts
and changes and ups and downs. It's all made us who we are right now at this moment. I have not forsaken the foundation of my faith. I have not, but I'm no longer forsaking the foundation of who I am either.
No, that's, I think, the most important
right? The
shift.
Integration of that.
Like, I'm not going to sacrifice me like anymore for anyone or anybody's idea or
any trauma or abuse or any of that. Yeah. So I think on that note we'll head out and
let's go eat
fun tonight.
Yeah,
girls night.
Thank you guys for listening. We really want to make weekly podcasts. Even love to do it twice a week because we really obviously love to talk. But I'm excited because I think we have more of a direction, even though it was super jumbled. We talked about so many different things over the last 38 minutes. But I think there's a really great focus on going forward on just like really just any issue that comes to mind, or just thoughtful things about history, world, and whatnot. And I'm really excited to just like have an audio visual diary of our minds.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Because why not?
Yeah. I'm super excited about it. All right.
So
we need to eat.
I'm
super hungry and I have a headache.
And if we can't see you next week, we'll see you on Saturday in 2 weeks.
We're going to be here.
We will be here.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Bye.